Okay, in this tutorial you will learn to understand what imagery is and why writers use it, to identify sensory details in writing, to analyze how writers use imagery to communicate meaning.
Suppose you are reading a story about a character named John. The writer tells you John has a cough that sounds like a dog's bark. The writer could have simply written, John had a bad cough. Instead, the writer used imagery to describe the sound more precisely. Imagery is language that helps a reader imagine what the writer is describing more clearly. Writers create imagery by using sensory details, words and phrases that appeal to the senses of sight, smell, touch, hearing, or taste. Writers use imagery to unlock a reader's memory of a specific experience. Imagery can use sensory details that appeal to one sense or to several at the same time. Click the words for examples of sensory details in description.
The glowing white face of the full moon shone on us. These details appeal to the sense of sight. The shiny red berry turned to tart juice with each bite. This visual contains a visual image that also appeals to the reader's sense of taste. The blast drowned out our voices as red and blue light filled the skies. An explosion is a visual image that also appeals to the reader's sense of hearing. The golden pie crust smells sweet and buttery. The details here appeal to the reader's sense of sight and smell. The lightning storm arrived with a blinding flash and a long roll of thunder that shook the house. A lightning storm appeals to the reader's sense of sight. The blinding flash, along with the sense of touch, shook the house.
As you now know, sensory details can appeal to your senses of sight, hearing, taste, touch, or smell. Which sense do the details in each sentence appeal to? Drag the correct sense to each sentence.
The rich, buttery chocolate practically melted in her mouth. The humid air reeked of wet dirt and burning wood. Sandpaper-like grit stuck to the grimy window pane. The window made a pitiful screeching noise when it was opened.
You probably noticed that most imagery is at least partially visual. However, it is just as important to understand imagery that appeals to other senses. Drag and drop the sentences that contain non-visual imagery into the answer box below.
Okay, let's drag one of these and see what each one says. No. Okay, her voice sounds like fingernails on a chalkboard. I felt a pins and needles sensation in my left foot.
When analyzing the imagery in a piece of writing, ask yourself, what senses did the details in this passage appeal to? Which words or phrases triggered those senses? The imagery in this passage appeals mostly to
Sight, hearing, touch, and smell. The bases were loaded. The audience hummed with excitement as the batter stepped up to the plate. After an echoing crack like a thunderclap, the ball whistled right out of the park. The team had won. The batter ran the bases, deafened by the roar of 50,000 fans.
writers use imagery to help their readers imagine something more clearly. But imagery can also be used to create meaning. For example, a writer who wants to show that a character is mean might use imagery of a wolf or a shark when describing the character. To understand the meaning created by imagery, ask yourself, what do these images make me think of? What might the writer be trying to tell me about a character, setting, or event? The streets were dark, except for the dim greenish light of 2 or 3 street lamps. Wind whistled through empty alleyways and rustled leaves into the gutters. I looked at my map again. Tip for analysis. The images appeal to sight and hearing and make the reader think of a lonely, spooky place. Without saying it directly, the writer is hinting that the character is in trouble. Remember that the type of imagery a writer uses can help you understand the writer's overall meaning. Read the passage and pay attention to what the imagery tells you. What do the images tell you about Devon?
She is outdoors. She is about to fall asleep. She loves music. She is in a peaceful mood. As she listened to the music, Devon's face began to glow. She closed her eyes as she noted as the notes danced around her. She waved her fingers back and forth like a tree in the breeze. The rest of the world just disappeared. So which images tell you about Devon?
Often, writers of fiction rely on imagery to describe settings and their effects on characters. Read this excerpt from Edgar Allan Poe's The Pit and the Pendulum. Which senses does Poe's imagery appeal to?
The blackness of eternal night encompassed me. I struggled for breath. The intensity of the darkness seemed to oppress and stifle me. The atmosphere was intolerably close.
Like writers of fiction, poets use imagery to describe their subjects in colorful detail. For example, consider these lines from Robert Louis Stevenson's poem, Windy Nights. Whenever the trees are crying aloud, and ships are tossed at sea. Which senses do the images in these lines appeal to?
Do you think it's touch and smell? No. Sight and touch? Partially correct. Sight and hearing is correct, and not touch and taste.
Imagery is language that helps a reader more clearly imagine what a writer is describing. Writers use imagery to unlock a reader's memories of specific experiences. Writers create imagery by using sensory details, words and phrases that appeal to the senses of sight, smell, touch, hearing, or taste. Imagery will often appeal to more than one sense at a time. Imagery can be used to communicate meaning. When reading any descriptive passage, ask yourself, what do these images make me think of? What might the writer be telling me about a character, setting, or event?